we're Chris and Ashley, and we are marriage surviving sexual addiction and infidelity. And this video was brought by another one of our commenters. She said, my husband's doing really well. He's gone through some sobriety, and he's created a lot of safety in our marriage, but I'm still, she's saying it's kind of a bittersweetness because I'm still sometimes struggling with the crumbs that I accepted. And I'm kind of gonna tag this in with something that quite a few people have brought to us, which is basically, why am I still in so much pain and struggling so much when my husband or my spouse with the addiction seems to be doing so much better? And I think the biggest thing that I want to say there and have this video be is just empathy and patience. Patience from the addict for the spouse and patience with ourselves, because I have felt this way a ton. And I think the biggest feeling that I can narrow it down to is guilt. Like, I felt guilty that I'm still struggling so much, or I'm still resentful, angry, sad, mad, whatever you want to call it, when, Chris is doing so well. And I think at the very beginning, it was something that was really hard for both of us, because Chris would be like, I'm doing really well. Yeah. I'm telling you the truth now for once, and like, not for once, but like, I'm constantly telling you the truth in our marriage.
100% truth.
100% truth in our marriage. And I haven't slipped with pornography in a long time and all these things. So why are you struggling? And one thing I want to point out is, again, it probably feels really, really great for the addict. I don't want to speak for you, but yes, great for the addict to finally be released of this,
a burden lifted off the shoulders, for sure,
of this second person that's living inside of you, this double life. It probably feels really great to have that released, but then all of that stuff comes on to me. So one, we're gonna take different healing times. There's just got to be some patience in with the spouse, who's gonna have to take time to heal and process everything that the addict just unleashed on them. And two, if it's been a while and there is recovery and there is safety, I think the biggest thing to see here is that there's just going to be pain from what the commenter said, from the crumbs of the past. There's just gonna be some pain that has to be processed, and there's gonna be triggers and trauma. And I've said in other videos before that there's a very long time process to understand, for me, that there was two people inside my husband, because at first I just thought everything was a lie. I thought that I had no idea who I was married to, and I thought that this, marriage, idea of marriage, everything had been shattered inside of me. And so I just kind of thought that everything was a lie. And then when I finally got through it, I was like, no, my husband's still in there. And I've said that in other videos, that he is still in there. But there was an addict inside of my husband, and that addict side, when he would feed that addict side, did do some damage and did some hurt.
Yeah, that idea of, everything was a lie, I think, is a very common thing to go to or believe. And but for me, I married Ashley because I love her. Okay? And I loved her all throughout the addiction in the first 7 years of marriage, though now, standing where I am now, I can completely understand why it can be seen as, well, your actions say otherwise, because they do. Those actions, they definitely speak otherwise. And that's where those crumbs come in. That's where that she did not get the husband she deserves. She received a shell of a man. The addiction, and this addiction literally changes the brain. It alters the brain. changes the way I'd think, changes the way I'd act. So she'd get a husband that wasn't emotionally present all the time because I'd be numb to things. And worse than that, at times she'd get a husband who would think horrible things. Um, I would think horrible things about her in order to justify to myself my behavior, in order to somehow feel as if I either deserved what I was doing, I was entitled to something. Yeah, things like if I spent an hour with the kids in the evening, thinking myself as a better parent than her, because I'd ignore, okay, and this is what an addict does, it's totally illogical. I'd ignore the truth, which was everything she did with the children all day long, and focus on, oh, you spent an hour with the children, you're the better parent. Um, or other thoughts of if something doesn't get done around the house, if there's a basket of laundry that piles up or the floor's not swept, of thinking she's lazy, okay? And if I sweep, then it's, see, I do everything. If I sweep one time in a week, I do everything around here. And it's those false things that are inflicted upon her that maybe I didn't verbalize those to her face, but I was certainly passive aggressive in that. And I think it's different for every couple in what the addict starts to do or how he starts to act towards his spouse. Um, but that was certainly some of the things I was doing. So she was getting crumbs. She was getting a husband who wasn't emotionally present. She was getting a husband who would think bad things in order to justify my behavior. And she was getting a husband who wasn't faithful to her, which is huge. And so it's completely understandable to sit back and think, how unfair that I didn't get what I deserved for however long it was. For us, for 7 years, just over 7 years of marriage, when all this came out, and then sobriety and healing could start, and then there's periods of having to do all this work to recover from it, and you can sit there and feel like this lost time. And I think it's perfectly normal to have that feeling of these crumbs, or not getting, everything that a marriage should be. Yeah. And if you think about it, it's a lot like if you're in a horrible car accident. If you're in a horrible car accident, yeah, over time, bones will heal, bruising will go away, but there may be continued headaches that come up from time to time because of whiplash, or there might be some muscle pain and fatigue and things like that that come about. And that's perfectly normal. That occurs in a car accident. It lingers, or it comes about when you're not expecting it.
Well, and I think the biggest part about that, I mean, for anybody who has experienced a car accident, I know for my particular car accident, I was turning left and somebody smashed into me. And here's the thing is after that, to this day, I will still a lot of the times make 4 rights to go all the way around the block to avoid making a left turn. And why do I do that? I do that because my heart and my head tell me, remember how bad that hurt? Remember that was unsafe? And that's kind of what happens here when somebody's saying, I don't understand why I'm still feeling pain. Well, it's because you're remembering those crumbs. You're remember when that was unsafe? Remember when that hurt? And so our minds and our hearts and our bodies, they just come up with this defense mechanism to protect ourselves. Because the thing is, as some of these things that my husband mentioned, those are things that did some major damage on me. Now, I don't pretend to be the perfect wife or perfect mom, but I never thought myself to be a bad wife or a bad mom at all.
Or
hands off, like some of the things that he said that came out later after all of his stuff came out. We started to discuss, like, well, what happened? What were you really thinking of me?
Yeah.
Like, did you even love me? All these things that Chris and I would have conversation after conversation, and what it kind of boiled down to and what I had to come to terms with so that I didn't lose my mind and so that I didn't become somebody who just constantly felt like they were a horrible wife, horrible mom, and that all this was my fault. Like, you'd be surprised the things that a spouse can start thinking about themselves and the kind of damage that it can do. But what we've kind of come to terms with and establish, and something that Chris and I have said very often, is addiction is a very selfish behavior.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm sorry, that's just factual. It's just
No, it absolutely is.
It's just a very selfish behavior that, like Chris said over and over, you'll do anything at all to justify what you're doing. And the thing is when you genuinely love someone, and again, Chris did always love me, I know that, but sometimes he was feeding the addict. And when you push that aside, and when you start to love someone and you start to have the healthy love, that's what is probably a better way to say it. When you healthily love someone, you are not thinking the grass is greener on greener on the other side. You are not thinking, let me find every fault I possibly can in this person so that I can justify what I want to do. No, instead, you're going to sit there and you're going to realize, okay, they're not getting something done today because clearly something must have happened, whether it was a busy day at work or, busy day running around with my sweet but very busy, active young children, whatever it may be. We start to give our loved one the benefit of the doubt. We start to really recognize why each other is doing something. And that's great that that's what we have now. But we do have a whole marriage of
the what ifs,
the partial,
why was it this?
The partial crumbs, like this commenter said. Partially in my marriage, not all together, because again, the husband I loved has always and will always be in there. But partially I got some crumbs, and in return, I think in return Chris had gotten some crumbs, because I think if the marriage isn't both working, if we're not both trying to see each other in the best light, eventually you do start to be.
But there's the thing. You think about that car accident. We can both experience pain from the car accident. I caused it. If I'm the other driver and I caused that car accident, yes, I have some lingering pains too, but I inflicted it. And so she makes a good point. Both of us are missing out on that, but why does that happen? Okay? Mm-hmm. And it comes about because of, and I love this analogy. I love the analogy that the commenter used of these crumbs. Okay? We weren't eating the full course meal. The marriage was not the elegant full course meal that it should have been. At times, I served her crumbs.
Yeah.
It's better. It gets better, but it's hard to not think about. Remember when?
Yeah.
Remember that.
And I will say, like, even much down the road, there are still moments where I absolutely take right turns in our marriage. There are absolutely moments that I am afraid to make that left-hand turn in our marriage. And there are absolutely times where I do take that left-hand turn in our marriage and I get terrified because, so for instance, like he said, there are still times when he's coming home from work and I get nervous, like, is the house up to par? And at the end of the day, we both don't really care about that. That's like the least of our concerns of what makes a great marriage. Yep. But because there was some damage there and because there was some crumbs dealt with, we have this whole car accident effect. And so we just wanted to share this message in the sense of we want to show that it's okay that sometimes it takes a while for the spouse to still not be okay.
Yeah.
to still be terrified to make a left-hand turn in a car accident, to still be terrified to open themselves up to somebody who has been passing out crumbs, to somebody who has had a difficult time maybe giving themselves fully because maybe there's been another person inside of them. Um, we we wanted to do this video to show just how difficult and how long it can be to basically come to the fact of, you know, they are doing better and now I'm doing better, but there are still times where that resentment, that sadness, that hurt is going to rear its head, and it's just a process of time and a process of healing and a process of continued safety and compassion in the marriage and communication and everything else. So,
Good luck. It's a journey.
yeah. Thank you.